Welcome to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk.
Hey everyone, it's Jenny Lisk, and this is episode 72 of the Widowed Parent Podcast. So I had such a great discussion with Heather Nesle and Maria Collins of the New York Life Foundation for this episode. And I know I said that I was going to be running encore episodes during the month of May so that I could focus on the editing on my memoir and try to get that wrapped up. But I wanted to make an exception for this. The New York Life Foundation has started a really terrific new fund, a new initiative that Heather tells us all about. It's called the Brave of Heart Fund, and it provides monetary grants to the family of frontline healthcare workers and volunteers who lose their lives because of COVID-19. And I wanted to get this out to you guys right away in case you know somebody who is a healthcare worker, somebody who may need this, or anybody who's a healthcare worker might have a colleague or a friend or somebody they know who might need this. So I'm hoping you guys can all help spread the word on this new grant program. It's going to open up very soon, sometime in the next week or so, and Heather tells us all about who it's for and how it works and how you can apply, and I know you can go on their website and see when it's open and get on the list to get notified when it does. In addition, Maria tells us about another initiative New York Life Foundation has going on. They're doing a ton of work in the area of childhood bereavement, and they have a brand new free download ebook called The Golden Sweater, and she tells us all about that, including the charitable component of the project with donations going to a children's bereavement program. So lots of great work they have going on, and I wanted to get this out to you guys right away. So I hope you enjoy my discussion with Heather Nesle and Maria Collins of the New York Life Foundation. My guests today are Heather Nesle and Maria Collins from the New York Life Foundation. And we are recording during the pandemic, so they're joining us today from their respective homes in New York and New Jersey. So Heather, welcome to the show, and Maria, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's great to have you guys here. Longtime listeners, I'm sure, will remember that Maria joined us way back in episode 28, along with Perry Chinalai of StoryCorps. And back then we talked about StoryCorps' Road to Resilience project, which is really terrific and which New York Life Foundation partnered with them on. So I'll put a link to that discussion in the show notes so listeners can check that out for sure. I think it's a really cool project, and StoryCorps has an app and all kinds of things I think you'll want to know about. But today the focus is we're back to talk about some new projects and initiatives that the New York Life Foundation has going on that I think you guys will want to hear about. So before we dive into that, let's hear a little bit from each of you about your roles at the foundation. And Heather, let's start with you. So if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about your role there and how you got into this line of work?
Sure. So my role is that I'm the president of the New York Life Foundation, and I run corporate responsibility at New York Life. I've been here for 6.5 years. Prior to that, I did corporate grant making at HSBC Bank in the U.S. And prior to that, I was in finance at Fannie Mae in the multifamily space. And, the short answer of how I got involved here, always interested in volunteering. I was a human services minor in college, considered working at Fannie Mae to be a bit of a hybrid, a private company, but with a public mission. And once I realized that you could actually get a job that paid you to give away money and work with nonprofits all day, I knew that was what I wanted to do. And so I was able to make that transition, and very, very lucky to land at New York Life 6.5 years ago.
Yeah, awesome. Good. Well, we're glad you're here. Thank you. And so, Maria, can you remind us your role and how you got involved in this?
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm the vice president of the New York Life Foundation. I really focus on the day-to-day bereavement strategy for the foundation as well as the company. And I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but how I got into the world of philanthropy actually was a roundabout way. But basically, I'm a social worker. I worked in direct service. And similar to Heather, I wanted to do more. I wanted to have a larger impact. And I happened to find a position at New York Life and the foundation working on their volunteer program. And I've been with them for 20 years this year.
Nice.
I did find a company that really embodied the same values that I have, which is understanding that it's not just the financial, but it's the emotional side of people that you have to worry about and support, and creating programs and investments that map the two are really important.
Yeah. Right. Okay, good. And I want to hear more about that later for sure, because I think you guys are really doing a good job with that. And I don't think I knew that you were a social worker first, so thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, so you guys have a brand new program, and it's called the Brave of Heart Fund. And I want to jump right into this because I think this is really important, and I really want people to hear about this. So, Heather, can you tell us, what is the Brave of Heart Fund?
Sure. So, when all of this craziness really started to take foot, we looked around and said, we are a company with a strong financial position, and we're in a position to help, as we have throughout our 175-year history. And we thought, well, we're not in a position to make masks or gowns. We're not in the entertainment space to provide new programming and content. But the thing that we can do is to do what we do every day, which is provide financial security for those who need it. And so the Brave of Heart Fund was established to provide monetary grants to the loved ones of frontline healthcare workers and volunteers who lose their lives because of COVID-19. And so the grants are there to provide immediate financial support for common needs to help families get back on track and start to see what their new life is going to be like, and to really honor these heroes who are, really the firefighters of the COVID crisis, right? They are going in day after day into a facility that, is just filled with people who are infected. And so they are really our frontline heroes helping us, and we wanted to do something for them.
Yeah. Okay. Terrific. I want to dive into that and understand that in a little more detail. First of all, actually, let me ask you, who are your partners on this project?
Sure. So we're partnering with Cigna and the Cigna Foundation. So both New York Life Foundation and Cigna Foundation seeded the fund with $25 million contributions from each of us. And then the New York Life Foundation is providing an additional $25 billion to match individual donations to the fund. In addition, Cigna is providing some mental health resources to the families, the surviving members of the families of healthcare workers who lose their lives. And all of that information on braveofheartfund.com, and you can get links to that information.
Okay.
We're also working with E4E, which is a subsidiary of the Foundation for the Carolinas. They are the nonprofit that is managing the fund, and will be the ones decisioning how much money people are able to get through the fund.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and I just wanted to make sure I understand who this is for. So, you mentioned healthcare workers and healthcare volunteers. Can you give us some examples of what you're talking about?
Sure. So an eligible healthcare worker is a person who worked or volunteered in or for a licensed hospital, a medical center, a clinic, nursing home. They can be an EMS, somebody who is providing transport services, or working in other licensed medical facilities. At the time of their death, they would have been living regularly in the U.S. and working in the U.S. And then while working or volunteering, they would have had exposure to patients who had COVID-19.
Gotcha. Okay. And so the person who's a healthcare worker who died might or might not have had COVID-19 themselves, but they were in this environment where they were working on the front lines and exposed to COVID-19.
Right. I mean, the thought is that they were exposed to COVID-19. That is what led to their death.
Sure.
And, obviously not everybody will be able to prove a positive COVID test, but,
right.
Our intent is to be as generous as possible. So if you can tell us that you were working in that scenario and you died from an illness that, is likely related to COVID, then that would generally count. And I want to be clear that when we say healthcare worker, we're not just talking about doctors and nurses. We're talking about cafeteria workers. We're talking about janitors. Anybody who is in that licensed facility would be included here. At our estimation, we're talking about 23 million people across the country who are likely in jobs that would be eligible to be considered for a grant.
Okay. Thank you for expanding on that. So anybody working in this hospital setting probably is being exposed right now in whatever capacity they're working in. So you're covering that. Okay, that makes sense. And Well, let me ask, because you guys are a life insurance company. Are you talking about your life insurance policy holders here, or what are you talking about?
No, this has nothing to do with New York Life Insurance clients or customers. This is just eligible to anybody on the front lines who are working. This is not a life insurance benefit. It is a grant that is being paid from E4E Relief, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And the grants are really what we would be considered by the IRS probably disaster grants. So they're related to, helping defray expenses that are essentially caused by this disaster, and this disaster being COVID-19.
Gotcha. Okay. And so not customers of Cigna either is not a requirement for
Not
this
at
either.
all. We won't even know. That's not a question that will be asked.
Gotcha. Okay. And so what kind of money are we talking about here?
So there's essentially two grants that those who are deemed eligible will be able to apply for. The first is a short-term grant of $15,000, which is meant to cover expenses such as funeral costs and immediate expenses that need to be paid out right away.
15,000. Wait, 15,000. Wow. Okay,
right.
Great. Okay.
The second grant, which is a longer-term grant, is up to $60,000, so 60, and that's to cover expenses for about 6 months, up to 6 months, for housing, utilities, clothing, childcare, counseling, medical expenses. And the grant determinations will be made exclusively by E4E. The eligibility doesn't guarantee a grant, but again, we're hoping that most people that apply will be able to get some relief. And there is a needs-based component to this, especially for that second longer-term grant. So you do have to show that you have a need for that money.
Okay. Oh, well, speaking of showing, I guess, can you give us just a broad sense of what kind of, documentation or something? Is this like you have to submit a gazillion documents, or how does this kind of work?
It really varies, and frankly, E4E will be the ones that will be requesting that documentation. But, we run a similar disaster relief program for our own employees and agents. So, when hurricanes hit, when COVID hits, our folks can also apply. And so some of the documents that you would need to show are receipts. So if you're saying that I have a mortgage that's $3,000 a month and I need some relief, you have to show that that is indeed how much your mortgage is. For the eligibility piece, you will have to provide some documentation that the person has died and that they were employed, by one of these licensed medical centers or nursing homes, et cetera. So there is some documentation, but again, we're designing the system so that we'll be able to take different kinds of documentation, and that, the aim here is really to get as much money out as we possibly can.
Okay, that makes sense. It sounds like you're trying to design it in a way that is flexible and yet meets the objectives of providing these disaster grants to the people who really need them, who are out on those front lines.
Yeah, and E4E, this is their area of expertise. So they really are able to not just know what documents they need, but are able to really guide people through the process to make it as easy as possible. And they know, all the people they talk to, because they deal in disaster, they're all going through these, situations where oftentimes it's hard to get your hands on documentation. And so they're aware of those kinds of circumstances and are very good at working with people.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so if someone is thinking, so someone has died, and the people who are eligible then are the spouses, are the children, like who in relation to the person who died is eligible potentially for this?
Yeah, so it's really to help folks who, for lack of a better term, would be considered as dependents. So somebody who is depending on this healthcare worker to fund costs related to their life. So it would be a spouse or a partner, a child, a child or a dependent parent. So those are really the folks that are going to be applying and receiving funding through the program.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Thank you for explaining that. And so if someone is thinking, gosh, maybe I qualify, maybe I don't know, I should find out more, is that who would they go to who could answer some of those questions?
So right now, we launched the fund to accept donations about 3 weeks ago. The fund has not launched yet to accept applications. That will happen before the end of May, so in just a few short weeks. But to get information, and there is a whole long list of FAQs that can answer a lot of those questions, you would go to braveofheartfund.com and just go to the frequently asked questions. And that lists in great detail who is eligible, the kinds of people, how we define a healthcare worker and things like that. There's also an email address where people can send questions and an 800 number.
Good. Oh, okay. Good. Okay. And so braveofheartfund.com, I'll make sure to put that in the show notes for sure so that people can find that and go and look all that up. And you mentioned something about donations. So if somebody is listening and is not in need of this fund, but is thinking, how could I help support people who are going to be grant recipients? Is there a way then that they can do that?
Yep, same website, braveofheartfund.com, and you can easily make a credit card donation through that site, and we would be happy to match it.
Awesome. Okay, so individual donations, small, large, in between, they can go there, they can make the donation, and then you guys will match that to add to the total funding available for this grant program. Okay, awesome. Good.
Right.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you said end of May, or when did you say people could start applying?
Yep, in the next 2 weeks. And we're putting together a plan for outreach. So we've spoken to scores and scores of organizations like the American Nurses Association, any organization that works with hospital workers, unions, hospitals themselves. So we will actually proactively let all those groups know when the fund is open to accept applications and provide them with resources to share with their communities.
Oh, good. So hopefully reach people through those workplaces and through those avenues as well.
Yeah, so we've already received 1,100 emails through the site. So we know that there is a lot of interest and a great deal of need.
Yeah, terrific. Okay, good. Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many healthcare workers out there, and this is such a crazy time and difficult time. And I just, thank you for spending some time to go through this with us, and I'm really glad to hear about it and help spread the word. And I hope that listeners, if they maybe aren't healthcare workers in their family themselves, or is not eligible for whatever reason, will share this with everybody, that they know who might be eligible, because I think getting the word out will be really terrific. So thank you. So let's switch gears a little bit here. So Maria, you guys always have tons of stuff going on with children's bereavement as I don't know, what do you call it? A focus area, I think, of your foundation.
Yes, we do.
And we talked a little bit about some of that last time, but let's talk about the new exciting program, project, deliverable, I'm not sure what you want to call it, that you guys have just launched. I believe it was last week, and it's called the Golden Sweater. Can you tell us what that is?
I'm happy to, especially during this time. I know as we're all dealing with grief because of COVID, and grief, as I stated a couple of times to individuals, it's become such a conversation that we at New York Life have been having for a long time. And finally, we're seeing the rest of the world joining in that conversation. The Golden Sweater was spurred out of a partnership that we were having with our marketing department as we were creating our acknowledgement for another initiative called Speaking Grief, which we can talk about later.
Oh, yes, I do want to hear about that.
And the idea of telling and acknowledging grief through the lens of a child was very appealing to New York Life. And with our internal folks, we came up with this concept of creating a 60-second video film about a little boy named Kai who lost his dad. That can be relatable to anyone, really any child, and missing him. And how does he still go on knowing his father is no longer there? And we took several concepts from our bereavement partners, because we did consult with our bereavement partners on this, well, what does that look like? Finding resiliency and hope during the time that a child is missing their caregiver, their father. So we came up with the concept of a golden sweater and finding something that reminds that child of that parent and to forge forward as they continue their life, but never forgetting their father or that loved one is still with them in their heart. So when you read the book and see the video, whether it's a golden sweater, a necklace, a book, a picture, you still can remember that person, even though they're not physically here. And we thought this was the perfect time to release it. It was scheduled to be released in April, and then we decided to wait a little bit and released it in May. And it really is something of a tool for parents and caregivers and other adults to use with their children to talk about death tangibly, using the word death, but also in a safe environment.
As I was reading it, I almost wondered, is it based on a true story or a true family? Or is it not? It sounds like it is.
It's not based on one story.
Kind of a composite. Oh, sorry.
Yes. No, that's because death happens to everyone, right? Everyone's going to lose someone by death. I think it's a universal story, but it's unique to each individual. So I think you can put yourself into that storybook and saying, how do I feel? And that's where we wanted parents and caregivers to see. Like, although, as I said, it's a golden sweater, it can be any item that child holds on to remember that person, as well as what are some questions or what are some themes in that book that a caregiver, a parent, can talk to their child about. Really opening that dialogue of remembering that person and building that resiliency and hope and love within that family.
Well, that reminds me, you guys have a discussion guide as well on your website, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. So when we released the book, and we were about to release the book, we knew that death is a very difficult conversation to have. Even being clear, a lot of people use loss, the person's no longer with us. We wanted to give tools to caregivers, to caring adults, to talk about this book in a concrete way. Also, visually bringing out, like in the book, I don't want to give it all away, but in the book, there are bears. And we give questions around the bears. What do the bears represent for Kai? And what do the bears represent for your child? I think those are some of the examples in the discussion guide to help parents have that really special conversation with their child. And the conversation may happen one time, or it may happen every time they read it. They may find something new, which is so great of having a tool. Because even as a parent myself, sometimes it's hard to have conversations. So having a little guidance from experts would be really helpful. As we know, during the pandemic, I did reach out to experts that are friends of mine and saying, how do I explain this? And I think it's helpful to have something written or guidelines to help me as a parent be less nervous, because we're all nervous about having that conversation, and really have an honest conversation with your child.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I, as a widowed parent, and I think I speak for probably a lot of my listeners, that it is hard to know what to say. It's hard to know how to have these conversations. We are not, most of us, not experts or, educated in childhood bereavement, educated in childhood grief. Most of us have other backgrounds professionally, or, maybe don't even have personal experience with it. And so I think it's really terrific that you guys have this discussion guide to help parents feel more comfortable about having those conversations. So how can they find the discussion guide?
Both the book, which is, you can download it for free. And with every download, we, the New York Life Foundation, will donate to one of 4 charities. So you download it, and next to it is another button so you can download the guide.
Okay. So on the website, and actually I want to hear a little more about this point, because I think this is really important. This book is got a few purposes. It's a terrific book for parents, for kids to have these discussions in their families. And there's this charitable piece on the back end. So I think you said for every download. So if I go download a copy today, my friend downloads a copy tomorrow, another listener the next day, you're donating $1 for each of those downloads to which organizations?
Yes. So for every download up to 175K, we will donate $1 to 4 charities. All the charities are our partners. So it's Luna Camp Aaron, which provides camps across the U.S. for bereaved children. Comfort Zone Camp, which is also another direct service provider of camps, bereavement camps. The National Alliance for Grieving Children, and TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. So it's a program for families who have lost someone in the military.
Yes, which any listeners who have that connection should definitely check out TAPS. And also I'm going to put in the show notes links to the discussions that I had with Aluna about Camp Aaron and Camp Mariposa, and also the discussion I had with the National Alliance for Grieving Children. Terrific discussion with Vicky J. And I think listeners, if they missed those, might want to go back and catch those, because I learned so much from both of those discussions. So good. That's so awesome that you guys are providing that funding as part of this project. So thank you for doing that. So you mentioned the book can be downloaded. So it's a free download. It's a PDF. Will there eventually be a book version, or what are your thoughts on that piece of it?
Prior to COVID, the New York Life Foundation planned on distributing books, The Golden Sweater, at screenings of Speaking Grief. However, our plans have changed. So we're looking at how to distribute these books going forward. So we currently do not have a plan of distributing the books. That's why we have it downloadable on our site.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So maybe something to look for going forward when the world gets less crazy and we have normal things happening again. I want to ask you about Speaking Grief, because you mentioned that, and I had heard of this before. Can you tell us, I think it's a documentary, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. Another exciting, and I don't mean to use exciting in a bad way at this time, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to continue that conversation about grief. So with Penn State, their local PBS station, we developed a documentary on grief. And it ranges from stillbirth to older adults, and how individuals deal with death and grieving individually, but universally. And I love the documentary for many reasons. One, it shows that grief is not a problem that needs to be fixed. It's an issue that we need to talk about in a real way. And this documentary offers light into what people are feeling and how people are reacting to them. And I look back at a couple of things when we were looking into this documentary. One, our grief survey. We did a grief survey in 2017, and we found that individuals stated they avoided conversations regarding death because they were afraid of they would say the wrong thing. Or friends would shy away from them because they didn't want to talk about the death of their loved person. So I think those two stats really demonstrate the need for this documentary and the need for a conversation, a national conversation around death and loss and how we grieve as a society as well as individually. Okay. So this, and you mentioned that it's through a PBS station is putting this together, one of your partners on the project. And I had heard that it was originally, and I think you alluded to this, actually going to be released through public screenings this month of May. I think I heard the Dougie Center was going to host a screening, for example, maybe other organizations like that. I assume that's all been scratched off the schedule. So has it been postponed, or can people see it online, or how do we get to see this? Well, great question. So no, it's not scratched. This is a conversation, a documentary that we all must see and have a conversation about. The documentary will be aired through local PBS stations across the country. Actually, if you go to speakinggrief.org, you'll see a list of air dates. And actually, I was informed just today, we had an uptake in a number of local PBS stations that will air the documentary, which I'm really, really thankful for and excited about.
Awesome.
A 46% increase, which I was very excited.
Well, that's, grief it's always been a big topic, right? But now it's a bigger topic on everybody's mind. So that's great.
Yes. So that's one way to see the documentary. The second way, we will be hosting virtual screenings. Right now, we're talking to the National Alliance of Grieving Children on hosting the screening. We're talking also to TAPS in hosting the screening and others. The local hometown, what I mean by hometown, in the film, there are families, and each family is from different parts of the country. That really gives it that diverse, feel of in different parts of the country. It's different in New York, different in California, both culturally, geographically. We were planning on hosting hometown screenings where we'd go there, the families would be involved, the local bereavement center potentially, the local PBS station. Unfortunately, we are on hold on those events until we can make decisions around COVID where it's safe to have screenings. If not, potentially we'll have virtual screenings, hometown screenings. So we're still working through that process. And in 2021, which is not a long way off, the documentary will be available on the Speaking Grief website. I'm not sure of the timing, but it will be available free.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So in the meantime, it sounds like I should, after we hang up here, I should go look on my Xfinity program listing for Channel 9 PBS here in Seattle, and or I guess it's 109 on the HD version. But anyway, I should search for Speaking Grief and hit record on my DVR so I make sure that I can catch that.
Absolutely. But you can also just go to speakinggrief.com, and they actually give all the air dates across the country.
Oh, okay. Okay. You did say that. Oh, thank you for reminding me. That sounds like it might be a little easier. Okay. All right, cool. Thank you. Good. I love that. I've heard great things about this documentary, so I've been anxious to see it, and I'm glad to know how I can do that. Good. Okay. So you guys have a lot of things going on. Before I let you go, I do want to hear a little bit about some of your other, you've had childhood bereavement work going on for quite a while, different people you've partnered with, through different organizations, doing terrific research. You told us last time about the childhood bereavement estimation model with Judy's House, which I will also link actually my discussion with them, because that was fascinating. And maybe I'm just a geek on research papers or something. I don't know, but it was super interesting. And I think most people are shocked when I tell them that Judy's House and your CBIM that you've partnered with them on has found that 1 in 14, and this is a U.S. statement, 1 in 14 kids by the time they turn 18 will have experienced the death of a parent or sibling.
That is correct.
That's amazing. In a bad way. Amazing in a bad way, I mean, of course.
Absolutely. And when you take that number today and let's project going forward, that number will increase greatly. Because that's only parent and sibling. If you increase that with grandparent, cousin, caregiver, others, that number will be considerably higher percentage-wise. And then friends. And one of the things that, the elephant in the room is COVID-19. I was just stating, you may not know someone who you speak to every day that has died from COVID, but you know of someone that has died of COVID. And having this conversation, whether it's Speaking Grief, whether it's the Golden Sweater, whether it's StoryCorps, as you mentioned earlier, one of our other funded projects, these are all tools to really help have that conversation, especially for young people. Making sure that they feel safe and secure and that they understand that death happens, but that doesn't mean we stop loving the person, and that we, the people that are left, are there to support them. Because and you know this, Jenny, all kids, what they need is support. And you mentioned Judy's House. I also am a geek because Mickey Burns from Judy's House and Brooke Greasy, they send me their papers. So I was reading one of their peer-reviewed papers, and I have to state this because I think it's really important to what we're talking about. The death of a parent or sibling during childhood is an adverse experience that increases the risk of future behavioral health, academic, and relational problems, as well as early mortality. That statement stops you to say, it's not that every child that grieves will experience this. Every child that grieves needs support so they don't experience this. And I think that's the difference. It's the support and resource factor that helps us all as a society learn how to deal with our grief and grieve together, individually, collectively, but understand that we all need support.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you read that excerpt or that piece from their study. It sounds like it might have been the same study that I read. That I was marking it up, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting, and I was so looking forward to talking with them. And what you were just saying reminds me of something that you shared with us last time of why this is so important to New York Life as a company. You guys are in the business of providing insurance, including life insurance, and can you just talk a little bit about this whole other piece besides the, delivering a check and why that's important to you guys?
Absolutely. New York Life has been in business for 175 years, providing peace of mind. What that means is when a death occurs, we're there financially to ensure that you can live, right? That person who left that life insurance policy to their loved ones did it out of love, making sure that they're okay. And I'm using air quotes, okay. What does that mean? Is it only half a person? We're looking at the whole person. And I think that's why New York Life has really addressed childhood bereavement in a big way. We've invested over $50 million in this cause because it's about taking care of the whole person, financially, emotionally, mentally, ensuring that they have the resources and access to resources to move forward after a death. And I don't mean move forward in the sense the person is forgotten, but I'm saying to ensure that they can stay in their house, but they can also take care of themselves. Self-care, getting the services you need. Because if you're concerned about your financial, that's on the hierarchy of need, basic needs, that's the financial piece. But we shouldn't forget that we also have the emotional needs of understanding what the death and the impact of the death has on me as an individual, and if I have children, on them, and how do we take care of ourselves together.
Yeah, okay. So important. It reminds me, can you tell us briefly about some of the other resources on your website that widowed parents might want to know about, including, I think you have some new COVID resources?
We do. So part of New York Life's response to COVID is to ensure that there are resources for internal and external stakeholders. So we have partnered with our bereavement experts to create specific COVID-related tip sheets, information about how to support your child, mental health tips, self-care, all the things, practical advice, short, quick. Some are written, which you can easily print out from our website, and some are video. We have a series called Ask the Expert, where we sit down and talk to an expert about a particular topic. We recently sat down with Julie Caplow to talk about anxiety and loneliness during the pandemic. How do we identify it in ourselves, and how do we identify it in our children? And you can go to the NewYorkLifeFoundation.org website to find more information. In addition to our regular bereavement resources for parents, for educators, we have a big initiative, as you probably know, our Grief Sensitive Schools initiative, that we would love people to know about, because we are supporting educators as well, because they need to support their grieving students, especially now during virtual schooling. They want to make sure that their students are okay, and we're providing those resources with webinars, again, information. We have a website called grievingstudents.org that provides information to educators in supporting grieving students.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for sharing those with us. And I'm going to go find that video you mentioned with Julie Caplow. I think she's doing some terrific work in the area of traumatic grief and research, and some really important work there that I think is important for people to understand. So I'm interested in what she has to say in that video you mentioned. I'll put a link in the show notes to that too. Good. Okay, gosh, I think we're actually reaching the end of our time today. Before I let you go, I just want to ask one last question. So, and Heather, if you don't mind, we'll start with you. So if you could say one thing to people who might be thinking about applying for the Brave of Heart grant, what would you say to them?
Well, first I'd say I'm sorry for your loss, and thank you. The person who died a hero, really working to protect the rest of us. But for anybody who thinks they may be eligible, I would really, really encourage them to go to braveofheartfund.com, look at the site, look at the FAQs, and just open up the application once it's available at the end of May and find out. Because, again, the intention of the program is to provide funding for as many people as we possibly can. And so I'd really, again, encourage folks who, meet the initial eligibility criteria to fill out the form, and also to let their friends, coworkers, and family members know so that we can get the message out far and wide.
Yeah, good. Terrific. Okay, thank you. And Maria, so if you could say one thing to widowed parents, especially at this time of the pandemic, what would you say to them?
Self-care. Making sure you're practicing self-care, because you are the person that's caring for your child. So actually my colleague Lacey Siegel would say, it's like the airplane. You have to put on the mask first, and then you can help someone else. Okay, terrific. Well, I think that's a great place to end. So my guests today are Heather Nesle and Maria Collins from the New York Life Foundation. So Heather, where can people find out about the Brave of Heart Fund and find out more information, and where to apply for that?
People can find out more information about the Brave of Heart Fund at braveofheartfund.com.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. And Maria, where can people download the Golden Sweater?
They can go to thegoldensweater.com.
Okay, terrific. And where can they find your other resources?
The website they should go to is newyorklifefoundation.org.
Okay, terrific. So, and also, Maria, if people are interested in finding the Speaking Grief documentary and looking up where they can view that on their PBS station, how can they find that?
They can go to speakinggrief.org.
Speakinggrief.org. Okay, super. I'll make sure to put that one also in the show notes. Okay, well, fantastic. Heather and Maria, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Heather Nesle and Maria Collins of the New York Life Foundation as much as I did. You can find show notes and all the links at widowedparentpodcast.com and look for episode 72. And please do help spread the word to all the healthcare workers and their families that you might know. And again, a reminder, it's doctors and nurses, and also anybody who's working in a hospital or similar type environment, as Heather described, whether they're working in housekeeping or the cafeteria or in any of those roles. So please do help spread the word there. Shout out today to listeners in New York and New Jersey, where my guest joined from. It's great to have all of you here. And please do reach out and let me know if there's some local resources in your area that I should know about, that I can help spread the word. And let me know if you have any questions that I can help answer. Speaking of which, I am working on a discussion for Father's Day, which is right around the corner. So I'm wondering what questions you guys have. It's interesting. I think it might be more obvious that Father's Day could be difficult if the father in the family has died and the kids, and the mom are trying to figure out what to do about Father's Day. I think it can also be difficult if the mother is the one who died and the father and the kids are now facing Father's Day. So it's, both ways can be difficult. And this is one of those days of the year that, can bring up issues and all that. So please do write to me. You can reach me at jenny@jennylisk.com. So it's JENNYLISK. and let me know what you want to know about Father's Day, what you're dreading, what you're thinking of or wondering about, or how I can put together a discussion that would be helpful. So, as far as what else is going on, I'm continuing to work on editing my memoir, so I'm hoping to have that out by later this year sometime. I'll keep you posted on that, and at some point I'll be asking for people who want to join the launch team and help do that, so keep an eye out for that. And speaking of which, the best way to stay in the loop on what's going on is to make sure you're on my email list. If you're not already, you can find it on my website, jennylisk.com. On the bottom of pretty much all the pages, I think, there's a short form you can fill out and make sure you're on the list and stay in the loop on episodes coming up and other resources and whatever's going on that I think would be interesting and helpful for my listeners. So please do get on that list if you haven't already. All right. Hey, thank you as always for listening. And until next week, keep smiling.
Thank you for listening to the Widowed Parent Podcast with your host, Jenny Lisk. Connect with us on social media and at widowedparentpodcast.com.